Robert Plank Show, episode 234. Innovate, systematize, repurpose, and scale. Overcome criticism, find simplicity, and be an imperfect superhero with Dr. Charles Runels. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the program. We're joined today by Dr. Charles Runels, and he's the inventor of the vampire facelift, the O-Shot, and all kinds of cool stuff. So, Dr. Charles, I'd rather just you introduce yourself. So, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored to talk with you because you, as you know, since I've been working with you, my business has doubled and then it doubled again. And so I owe a lot of gratitude to you. But I've lived several lives. I'm 56. I was a lifeguard. I was a research chemist. I was an emergency room doctor for 12 years. I did clinical trials. I did general practice. And I've ran a wound care center at a hospital, and so it's really funny. My children say, Dad, we don't know what to say when people ask us what you do for a living. But I like to think of myself as the guy that just wants to see people healthy and happy and having good sex and good family. And so, but the most recently, since we've been involved, it's been about some research that has to do with rejuvenating tissue and using that to create a more natural, beautiful appearance as well as better function in the bedroom.
Okay, cool. So like in the past, you did all these different things, and now you kind of have found your focus. And what's cool about like today's episode is that we have sort of three different groups of people who are listening, right? We're gonna have like some doctors listening who are probably checking up on what you do, and maybe they themselves can use some of these procedures you have to help their business. We might have some people who maybe want the procedure itself, and then we have some other marketers who might be listening to your story, and even though they themselves might not be doctors or things like that, they probably can get some really cool takeaways about sort of where you were and then what you've built up to now. And sort of what comes to mind is I didn't even know this was like a thing until maybe a couple of years ago, but I've heard these sorts of things about how like doctors, they go to medical school, they run up all this student debt, and then they think that, great, I'm a doctor, I'm going to make a lot of money, and then next thing you know, they either have to work a bunch in a hospital, or if they go into their own sort of practice, they have to rent office space and hire employees. So I mean, is that a real thing that I'm hearing about, where like a lot of doctors are sort of stuck, where they just keep running up all these expenses, and they thought that I'm a doctor, I'm going to make money? Is this a real thing, that the real problem that doctors are having?
It's surprising that it's talked about as little as it is. I saw one article a year or so ago in the Wall Street Journal, but it's a real thing. It's hard for people to imagine the physician actually being able not to not get rich, but to actually stay in business. It's become difficult for someone who takes care of sick people to keep from going out of business. It's that difficult. And so, and that seems like, is that really a real thing? Yep, I promise you it's a real thing. And and there's lots of reasons for that. And if I start going through that, it'll sound like I'm whining. I just tell doctors, well, if that bothers you, just quit. And not quit being a doctor, but quit playing the game. Quit begging people to pay you. Become very good at what you do, and treat some people for free and charge some people. So that was you. I don't. Most people don't know it, but back in the 1960s, when I was born, you had hospital insurance. You just paid your doctor. So, and the doctors had sort of sliding scales based on what kind of money the person had. It could be that it would go back to that. I don't know. But I know one thing is that when I saw the internet and I knew that I had some ideas that were teachable, that was valuable, making people well is valuable, that I thought this might be a way to supplement my income so that I can support my bad habit of wanting to make sick people well. And many of your teachings has helped make that come to fruition. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's a real thing, a very real thing.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of does, because it's one of those things where, like you said, like I'm not sure if it's not talked about because it's it's an unpopular thing to say, or some people are embarrassed or whatever. But so it sounds like if people, whether they're doctors or they're marketers or whatever, if they find themselves sort of stuck in that situation where they feel like if they keep going down this path, they'll be out of business. It sounds like some of the things that you've done is that, number one, we mentioned that there's the internet so that you're able to reach more people, and then you tried out these different ideas as opposed to, just being a doctor and just, just going through the motions of the day and just seeing patients. And so you sort of developed this procedure, and I've had to explain it to my current girlfriend and to my ex fiance, as opposed to like this guy that I have to meet every week, or not have to, but want to meet. I have to sort of explain what it is that you do, and like the thing with the blood, and you pull it out and inject it back into genitals, and sort of what I guess, I don't know, like made it sound more normal, made it sound more like an actual medical procedure, was that I guess it's a thing that people use it for like sports injuries and stuff like that. So can you sort of explain like this whole blood thing, this PRP thing that
Hmm.
you've sort of turned into a trademark procedure and stuff?
Yes, it is an outrageous sounding idea, isn't it? But uh, with my wound care background and my biochemical and chemistry research background, it was very, when I first saw the idea and how it's being used by the dentist, which is this hard to heal wound, like a knee. There's not much blood supply in the cartilage of the knee, or around a tooth where someone had radiation for throat cancer. Now you have to do something to it, have to operate on it, and you want it to heal. How do you make it heal? So what the dentist came up with, and the orthopedic surgeons did all this research, and most of the professional athletes have had this done, or many of them one time or another, Tiger Woods and many of the NFL athletes, is you just draw blood out and put it in a centrifuge and you get the platelets out. We always thought, I always thought as a kid, platelets just clot your blood, keep you from bleeding to death. But that blood clot is not just to stop hemorrhaging. If you remember that scraped scab you had on your knee when you fell on your bike and your mom said don't pick at the scab, but you did anyway, and that scab had this yellow goo around it, that's what we're making. And that goo has fertilizer for stem cells. It recruits, it sort of gives a chemical whistle, and all these stem cells come from your bone marrow and they migrate to the area and they grow the skin back. And I just thought, well, shoot, if it works great for knees and hard to heal tissue like a jaw that's been rated for cancer, what would it do for someone who's having problems with sexuality, or a woman who's urinating on herself to help her keep from having problems with that? Could I rejuvenate the genitals in a man to help his sex work better? And there's a disease called Peyronie's where the penis is crooked, and maybe help straighten it out. And so 7 years ago, I started working with it, and we've built it up to a group of over 1,000 doctors in pushing 30 countries. I'll be lecturing next month in Serbia and Athens, Greece, and Paris, France, and where else am I going? Chicago next week. That's all this month. So um, go figure. People have genitals around the world and they want to know how to fix them. So it's been really an exciting ride. And I could have never done that without the power of the internet to not just put ideas out there, but to create a forum where these amazing doctors in our group. Last week I had a class where the urology was here who trained at Mayo. We have just amazing people from multiple medical schools that are leaders in their field in our group, and they're sharing information real time. And I'm using some of the tools that you taught me, like using webinars and using membership websites to create these forums that are, just think about this. Even a few years ago, if you had a new idea, what you did, if you were going to step by step, you would get an institutional review board, do the research, get it published. Maybe 6 months later, it's in a journal that comes through the mail with a stamp on it. You read it, another person reads it, they write letters to the editor, and 2 years later, another research article comes out in response to that. Now, I'll do a webinar and get all these amazing doctors talking to each other, sharing their experiences, and from that, we will plan the research that we already know what's going to happen pretty much because we have a collective experience of 1,000 doctors worldwide, and then we go prove it to the world. of course, we get the institutional review board, and we do it right. So this month we have a paper coming out in the Journal of the American Academy of Dermatology that was financed using and it was a $100,000 research project that I financed out of the funds that we generated using, guess what? Membership Cube. Isn't that
Awesome.
fun? It's
That
fun.
is.
Yeah, I'll tell you that software rocks. So you've got the American College of Dermatologists and American Academy of Dermatologists, whatever, the American Board of Internal Medicine, and we need these professional organizations. But I've got a real-time membership site made with Membership Cube where I can get the best minds in there talking with each other, make recordings of it so that people can watch it 24/7, think about it, talk about it on blogs, and then we go publish the papers. And it's shocking the ideas these people can come up with when you put their minds together.
Awesome. It sounds like the sum is greater than the parts in that sort of situation, and like you cut out all that previous delay when people would have to review things. Instead, the doctors sort of just get together and do it. And I think that what Lance and I like a lot about you, as far as like what you've implemented, is you'll just go ahead and do it. You'll just go ahead and get something online, and then it'll be like 95% perfect as far as like the look and the feel. But you're just like, what's more important is that people can get in there and talk, and it doesn't matter as much what things look like, or if certain words aren't there, or things could be better. What's more important, that it's up and it's running and functioning, and people can go in there and talk. And I think that a lot of those things that you've mentioned, like as far as the those medical journals, and then that there are multiple uses for some of these procedures, I think is pretty cool. Because again, sort of going back to having to explain, who is this weird sex doctor guy that I'm talking to. I had to explain, well, this is a procedure that yes, it improves sex, and it helps women post childbirth who are having new difficulties, or Peyronie's disease or incontinence. So it's like, it's not just a thing just for fun, or like just that sort of a optional procedure. It's something that actually helps a lot of people. So sort of along those lines, I've seen, or maybe you can tell us about like some of the, I guess, the difficulties, or like the stigmas coming across with some of this. Because I know that that there's like I guess your enemy is like some of like the Viagra pushers, and I've seen some clips of you on some of these local news programs, where sometimes some of the women on these programs interviewing you have been sort of like unsure, or not, are kind of almost hostile about it, and you've been sort of this soft-spoken, like careful, like reasonable guy. So can you sort of talk to us about that, about like some of the barriers or the stigmas you've come across when trying to promote this procedure?
Yeah, um, in the beginning it was disappointing to me, but then it became almost a badge of honor that I was expecting. When you look at the most medical procedures, it takes about 20 years for them to come about, 10 to do the research, and then another 10 for people to accept them, for them to become standard of care. Maybe that's the way it should be. Maybe things should move that slowly in medicine. But usually the first guy to bring something out really takes a licking. The guy who won a Nobel Prize for discovering, for example, that ulcers are caused by bacteria. He was from Australia. For close to 10 years. He preached about it. He did the research. Nobody would pay attention to him. Finally gave himself an ulcer and cured it. And one of the tabloids here in the States picked it up. And then the doctor started reading the research that he had done. And when he gave his little Nobel Prize speech, he said, the enemy to progress is not ignorance. The enemy of progress is the illusion of knowing, thinking you know when maybe there's something that you don't know, that you don't know you don't know. And so, people have been very aggressive towards me, and I think that you just have to decide, is it worth the battle? In my opinion, people are going to love you or hate you no matter what you do. There people who write love letters and make heroes out of the guys on death row. And then there are people who hate physicians. The only way to make no enemies is to sit on the couch, in my opinion, and watch television all day. If you get up and you make something happen, you'll, by definition, make some friends and make some enemies. And I almost grade a person's influence by how powerful are their enemies. So yeah, things happen. And in the beginning, I was one of the first to start using YouTube as a physician. I was one of the first to tell insurance to go away because I couldn't be a good doctor. The average primary care doctor they break even on patient 21. So at 15 minutes apiece, if your family practitioner breaks even at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, he loses or she loses money if they spend too much time with you. So I said, I can't do good medicine this way. So I'm just going to figure out a different way. And yeah, I was criticized, and I went broke a couple of times, but the idea was okay, do I want to live a normal life, or do I want to, even if I fail, do I want to fail at something really cool where I'm trying to make a difference, that an adventuresome difference, not just with an individual, but the way medicine is done. And that may seem, really almost psychotically ambitious, but I thought, what the heck? I just get to hang around here 70 or 80 years. Why not? So that's what I did. And I could have never, ever, ever pulled it off, in my opinion, without the power of the internet. You've been to my office. I've got 3 red lights on Main Street. It's a beautiful little town, but it's just not a lot of people here. And be here and do what I pulled off could have never happened without these internet tools.
Awesome. And all those ups and downs, I mean, as you're explaining it, it sounds like a lot of fun. And what I'm hearing is that, you and I both, we're only here for a few decades and we only have one shot at it. So we might as well sort of make it fun. And so, I'm glad that you mentioned, when I visited your office, because when I visited that town, I visited your office, like it's up above a bookstore, and like I was like, I don't know about, like, the sign was called, like, I don't know if it was like called like Temple Repair or something, but I was like,
Well,
I'm
there
not
is
sure.
no sign. There
Oh,
was no,
perfect. So,
there was a sign for the business below, but there is no sign at all. None. Just a stairway to a office that's hidden on purpose, because I figure if you don't belong in my office, it's almost like you have to qualify. You don't belong in my office unless you're invited. And if you're invited, sort of like some of those secret doors in New Orleans where the best places are, you have to know which door to knock on. And the people who don't belong there don't know where the door is.
yeah, got to have the secret knock and stuff. And I know that that a lot of that is based off some of, like, the J. Abraham stuff that you follow. So could you sort of maybe talk about some of the things that you do like that? Like, I know that there's no sign. Sometimes you send people down to that bookstore below and use it as a waiting room. Sometimes when you do your workshops, you'll show up like a couple of minutes late on purpose. That way you're the big important guy that comes up after everyone is settled. So, I mean, is there anything I'm missing there, or are there any cool, like, little marketing tricks and things like that that you're using that are kind of interesting like that?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Jay. I learned a lot from Jay when I was broke the first time, and his whole theory of just being excellent at what you do, and and leveraging your business by collaborating with others, but deciding you're going to be excellent. I like to use the analogy of Superman. Imagine Superman saying, "Hey, 20% off if you guys let me save you today." It's ludicrous, right?
Right.
But if you've got something that's of help to people, you offer to help them, and it's up to them to decide. But it's not up to me to beg you to be a part of my life. And so I took that idea, and what happens is the people you match come to you, and you're surrounded by people where there's mutual respect. I do whatever it takes to take care of my people, and they respect me enough to pay me for it if they have the means. And it's a really lovely way to live a life. So, and I do want to bring a couple, I guess, if you're asking me to expand about what tips I would have along those lines, I can't say enough about the idea of find someone who's done what you're trying to do, and listen to them. And I've always, as a kid, my dad always said, always be teaching a class and always be in a class. always be teaching a class, and always be in a class. And so, as you know, when I came to first met you and Lance, I had, I don't know, you guys were probably fourth or fifth mentor that I had hired, and basically just here, as long as you make me money, I'm going to keep paying your price. Just make me more than what I'm paying you, and whatever it is, I'll pay it, and I'm going to hang with you until I run out of things to learn from you. So I spent 3 years with one guy who was very good at writing emails, and I paid him $1,200 a month for an hour, and but my emails got better and better and better. And at the same time, I'm studying medicine. So if I was going to say one thing, it would be that. And if it's marketing, internet marketing, you guys have been very instrumental in teaching me the tools. I'll just elaborate on one other thing you said about my websites. I actually had an email once from someone who teaches marketing at a university, teaches web design at a university, about how ugly my original Vampire Facelift website was. And I thought, I usually don't respond to that sort of thing, but she said she was going to use my website as an example about how not to build websites. And I said, I don't need to answer that. And finally, I really honestly just got curious, and I answered and said, what's really bothering you? And I got another vitreous sort of response. And so I emailed her back and I said, listen, I'm going to make this really plain. Part of the reason I do well is because of what you're teaching your students. I said, you teach pretty little debutantes. You make little debutantes that sit pretty on a bar stool and bat their eyes, and I make ugly prostitutes that go out and make me some money. And that's the way my websites are. That in some ways, as you know, you can get too pretty and people don't trust it. You know what my websites look like? They look like who I am, which is a doctor who's not so into making things look fancy. I'm into a website that teaches you what I want you to know and motivates you to be well. And I don't have time always to even proofread. I'll leave a word misspelled. I'll leave a tense wrong, and people forgive me if the content is kicking butt. So that's the way I think about it. So, and I think people respond to that.
I mean, I think they do too. And me and Lance have used some of your websites as some of our own examples of a web page that, is ugly, but gets the job
Mhm.
done and has like a good Alexa ranking and makes a bunch of money. So it's like, well, who cares? I mean, if the choice is between a pretty website that doesn't make money or an ugly website that makes money,
Mhm.
I'll take the ugly website all day long. And I mean,
Mhm.
lots of cool nuggets in there about what you said about, find someone who is sort of doing some form of what you want to do and sort of model them and, have
Mhm.
those mentors. And me and Lance have had our own mentors and stuff like that as well. And so, when you're building like these groups of doctors and things like that, do you come across sort of like I don't know if you'd call it like the doctor arrogance or the curse of knowledge, but do you find if some of these doctors, say for example, to use that ugly website sort of example, do you see any of these doctors who are like too afraid to go out and do anything and too afraid to be on TV and make a website because they're afraid that one typo will like ruin their whole image? Do you see any of that?
Oh, as you know, like crazy, because they're so afraid of maintaining that ambiance of whatever that is that we were taught to be some perfect physician, and somehow if they misspell a word, they'll lose credibility as a physician, or if they make a video and somehow they look, I don't know, I've had them complain, well, I'm afraid that of my Ukrainian accent, or that I look homosexual, or that I'm older, my face has wrinkles in it.
Or even
And I'll
like
say,
head tilted or blinking too much, not
Yeah,
blinking enough,
little
drive yourself
stuff.
crazy. Yeah.
Right. So be homosexual. The people are going to love you for that. Be Ukrainian. They'll think you're smarter because you don't have an American accent. Just be whoever you are. And so that's what I am. I'm an internist from Alabama who's passionate about reading as much as I can and taking care of people. And I don't mind taking a lick. I'll tell you something else that is worth remembering. Most of the guys like me that are geeky enough to enjoy thinking about the internet know who Stan Lee is. So you know who Stan Lee is, right?
The comic book guy.
Yeah, the comic book guy.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Stan Lee can teach you a lot about marketing. You ready for this? I'm going to give you the juicy pearl. This one thing is going to be worth this podcast, in my
Awesome.
humble opinion.
I'm
In
ready.
my humble opinion. What did Stan Lee do to make there were comic books before Stan Lee, but when Stan Lee came around, boom, people loved the comics. What was his one big idea?
No idea.
He made the heroes not perfect. He made them fuss. He made them have problems with their family. He made them have weaknesses. He made them not perfect. And that made them lovable. It made them relatable. And so if you want to be a superhero, which who doesn't want to be a superhero at whatever it is they do, give up being perfect and people will actually like you better.
Interesting. So by being that imperfect hero, it's like, well, now you're differentiating from everyone else who's trying to be perfect, and you have all those extra sort of layers and dimensions, and now you have that relatability, and now you have all kinds of cool stuff to talk about, and that's super interesting. And a couple of times in in the coaching calls that you and me and Lance all do together, like once or twice, Donald Trump has come up, and whenever any sort of controversial or political figure comes up, you always have to sort of be careful to not lose like that audience or not say the wrong thing. But what's been really interesting about Mr. Donald Trump is there's a lot of things that I don't like about him. There's a lot of things I do like about him, but geez, like everyone has something to say about that guy, and some good and some bad, but the those imperfections or those weaknesses are right there. They're plain as day. He doesn't try to hide them, and I think that there's something to that. There's something to that whole just like being authentic, and you're Dr. Charles, you're like the reader and sort of the like the introspective, like the silent sort of meditative kind of dude. So it's cool that has shown up as opposed to trying to cover it up. And what that reminds me is, like the first couple of years that I was trying to do this internet marketing stuff, I was like 15, 16 years old, and I was trying to be polished. I was like, well, I can't have my name anywhere, can't have my picture anywhere. I'm going to use super proper language, and it was just coming across as just saying a bunch of nonsense, trying to say, trying
Mm-hmm.
to match what everyone else was doing. So yeah, there's something to the imperfections and that authenticity. And so, as we're sort of winding down this call, like I've noticed that in your business, there's a lot of like repurposing in a good way, like repurposing what works, and that sort of manifests itself in the procedures that you do. Like you'll use this PRP stuff, this platelet rich plasma procedure for different purposes that we mentioned a little bit, and then you'll also sort of teach doctors and have this whole package that you'll have, and you'll apply that to the different procedures. So you say there's the membership site, there's the workshops, there's the directory. So just to sort of make sure we're all on the same page, like what exactly are the different procedures that you have?
Yeah, sure. So I have the vampire facial, which is what Kim Kardashian had, the vampire facelift, which is using the plasma combined with a filler like Juvederm. I have the O shot or the orgasm shot, which has also been proven to help some serious skin diseases like lichen sclerosis. And the Priapus shot, after the Greek god of fertility, Priapus shot, or the P shot for short. And as you said, it's really, yeah, the pleasure's a part of it, but it's about family. Emerson said, "Love is sex and beauty is the scaffolding of love," and we're seeing families and relationships put back together. And I appreciate you, bringing out what we're doing. But I really want to throw it back your way and say that the growth of the group and the funds that are funding the research. We just had another project we're undertaking that's going to be $150,000, and we've spun off two nonprofit organizations. The power of tapping into the flow of what people need and into their pain with the internet is so rewarding. It is so rewarding and life-changing. And I want to really emphasize that people understand that your package of products has helped really change my business and secondarily the life of a lot of people. So that's why I'm here. I'm grateful. And I would encourage anybody, if you're not sure what to do next, I love how it's stepwise thought out in systems. That's what I think is the strong point for you and Lance. You understand systems and creating this way of putting various aspects together like that. So another big thank you for that.
Awesome.
I would start, if I was starting off, I'd start with the webinar crusher or the membership cube. To me, those were the two big things that blasted off things for me.
Awesome. Webinars and membership sites. And we appreciate you, being the kind of person that implements as opposed to sort of sitting around and wondering what could have been. And so you mentioned there's those procedures. And so, I mean, what are those for exactly? Like, because I've seen that I think the facial was for the face, and the O shot was for women's genitals, and the Priapus is for male genitals. Or could you sort of clear that up a little bit? Because I'm not really exactly sure like what these
Yeah,
procedures
sure.
are
For the
individually there.
female, it really seems to be helping a lot with lichen sclerosis. That was what our most current research was about. It also helps with women who have pains. Even a young woman can deliver a child, and then she's scarred from the trauma of the delivery, and that can leave her with the scarring causing pain. And younger women, 1 in 20 women in their 20s have trouble holding their bladder when they exercise. By the time you get 50, it's close to half of them. Well, the options are not good. Medicines that have side effects or surgeries that are or can be sometimes have their own problems. So the plasma that we use with the O-shot has never been associated with a serious side effect. So it gives a nice option for a lunchtime way to stop the incontinence. And then on the man's side, we're helping with erectile dysfunction and with men who have a crooked penis, and also recovering from prostate surgery. Those are the big things with that procedure. So it's been very, very rewarding. And there are other things down the line. Part of the danger of teaching anything is you get stuck. Part of the reason I like you and Lance is that you're constantly developing these new ideas. Because that's the adventure of it, isn't it? Making something and putting it out there and let the world. Another one of my favorite quotes is by Andy Warhol. He says, "Just make art. Or other people trying to decide if it's good or bad, make more art." And I think that applies to research and websites too. Just make it. When people are trying to figure it out, make another one. And then some of them will do well and some won't, but you'll have a good time.
Yeah, and I don't know, and you probably know, like I can't remember, there was I don't know if it was like Michelangelo or there was some sculptor who made like 50,000 works of art in his lifetime, and I was just thinking like you'd have to make like several priceless things like every day to add that up, and it's like some are okay, some are great, some are in the middle, and it's like the only way to
Uh,
kind of operate is to move forward. And I think that like my attitude with those kinds of things, like having the side projects and the stuff on the back burner, is that some of that stuff sort of takes a while to pick up speed. It might take like 6 months or a year to sort of get it figured out or to get the following. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And when I was in your office, I was blown away that I guess like the next thing is like the stuff with like the hair regrowth, I guess, right?
yeah, hair. But I've got some ideas with diabetes and things that are totally unrelated to the plasma. I just love. We don't have enough time in a lifetime to do it all, but it's really nice to have a way to just communicate so freely with people and get feedback and feed it out there, and then get a letter from a patient who was helped by a doctor that was taught by a doctor that you taught. And it gets to be, wow, this is really interesting.
when it's really catching on and stuff. And so, but I
Hmm.
liked that. I really liked that. You mentioned how me and Lance we make our membership sites, and we sort of we got all the bugs worked out as far as like we said, well, okay, we made a web page, we made a membership site, we figured out the PowerPoint stuff, we figured out the webinars, we figured out how to teach a class, and then maybe if we taught a class about membership sites, we said, well, we did all this. There's all this like extra work or these extra like learning curve or growing pains that went into making this really cool class. So it would be sort of a waste to just stop at one class. If we have, all these ingredients like PowerPoint, the web pages, and then we move over and say, well, let's make a course about webinars, and then that works well, and then we reuse some of those ingredients to make a course about books and stuff. And so that's what I kind of like about how you repurpose this procedure
Hmm.
into these different uses. And then after you've
Hmm.
done that, you've also reused the sort of the offer or the package or the tools that you give doctors. And so, if a doctor said, okay, like, I want to sort of, not break even at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and I want to scale my business more, and I want to get paid more for the time that I'm doing, and say they buy like access to Vampire Facelift. I mean, what does a doctor get when they buy
Hmm.
access to a membership site like that?
Yeah, just real quick, one other comment. I lived for a year out of my car. I thought it was cool that Gandhi died basically with a pair of glasses and a loincloth. I'm not really attached to things that much, but I found out it's really cool to have some cash flow to do things with. And so you just talked about breaking even by the time by 3 o'clock comes around. Well, now I break even before I have breakfast, and it's just there, right? And then you can take that flow and do the next research project or build the next website. So, and I forgot what your question was. What was the question?
The question was,
That's funny.
well, I mean that is good that you brought that up,
Oh,
by the way.
oh yeah, yeah. So what do they get once they're in? So
Yeah.
once they're in the site, I wanted it to be like what you were doing. Basically, it's okay, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So once they're in the site, it tells them how to do the procedure, where to buy everything. It's just do step one, then do step two. It tells them how to market the procedure, what they should ask for if they do a web page to do the thing on the marketing side. It tells them basically, like, it almost hand all of it to their staff except for the procedure part. Then it tells them in detail what to do with the blood, where to buy the centrifuges, the consent form, everything. And then webinars to keep them up to date with the research we're doing, and a blog where they can ask other doctors around the world about what they're seeing when something different happens. It's just all right there, and just they get a little password and pay us less than $100 a month to be in the group.
You feel a lot better when you get out of that survival mode, right? Like when there's like money coming, like you break even before breakfast as opposed to later in the day. It's sort of just there's something to like just not having to be always panicking and not always having to scrounge around and being able to sort of have that calmness and actually think about what your next move
Mhm.
is. And like there's a chapter in, I think it's in Think and Grow Rich, about how like when you sit down for breakfast in the morning, you flip the light switch, and like there's so many things that went into having electricity. And when you have your oranges, like those came in from Florida, and when you have your bacon, those came in from
Mhm.
here, and like your eggs, those came in
Mhm.
from here. And it's like once you get to the point where you're just out of scrambling all the time, you don't have to go to the water well to get water, you just turn on a faucet, then you can sort of move on to that next level. And so as you describe, so that's sort of along the lines of getting out of that survival mode. But then as far as that package that you say you provide to doctors, like you explain the procedure, you explain where to buy the tools, there's the videos, there's the webinars, there's the directory, and permission to use the procedure and market it and all that kind of stuff. It's sort of like everything's all in one place. And so, at least for me, and I'm curious to your thoughts on this as we're sort of winding this down. At least for me, like I've always had to struggle with making things more beginner friendly, and just because like if I'm trying to teach some kind of like computer programming thing, I think, well, I can't make it this simple because everyone would be super bored with it. But then when I actually like see the feedback, it's like, okay, well, I had to be slow, I had to be deliberate, I had to be just sort of make things as super dumbed down as possible. So have you experienced any of that when you're trying to like teach this medical procedure, but then also make it basic and for beginners, but then also not get people bored? Do you experience any of that with trying to find that balance?
People come from around the world to our classes, and that maybe you should make it as elaborate as possible. But there's elegance and simplicity in being able to take a whole textbook, for example, about how Botox should be done. And I used to and do what a math teacher of mine used to say. He was taught us linear algebra. He said, you should be able to work that problem on the back of an envelope. And and like Einstein said, make them simple as you can, but not more simple than they should be. And yes, getting that balance. But I feel like the best teacher does take a lot of ideas and make them as simple as they can, not because your students are simple minded, but because that's more elegant, it's more helpful, it's more useful, and it's what good teachers do. That's part of the thing I like about your products is they do, and they do that, and as I've taught my class, there's always a marketing piece to it, and I've found that people get much more out of it the more I simplify and structure it so that it's the best of the least amount.
Cool. So make things super simple, and then what do you do to fight the boredom from some of those doctors who maybe some people are used to things being complicated and are having sort of difficulty thinking in that sort of way. So how do you overcome that aspect of it?
Uh, Part of it is, I think, attracting the right people that understand that taking something, I usually start my workshops off by saying, many of you have been doing, for example, Juvederm or Botox for 10 years. There was a lady in my last class that started in 1986, which was when it was still considered to be experimental. And at the end of the class, she said smilingly, I'm going to have to rethink everything I'm doing after seeing your class. But because what I will say to them is everything you do will still be there, but when you see how I've simplified it, you're going to have other tools and you're going to think about what you're doing in a different way because the way I've structured and simplified it. I think one of the best advice some of the best advice ever given about learning anything was at the last chapter of Bruce Lee's book on fighting. He dictated a book on fighting when he was injured, and his wife transcribed it and published it. And he says, after you learn everything in this book, tear it up and throw it away. Because and you understand that being a programmer, there's a structured way you learn to do programming. But then after you learned it, you forgot all that and you did it your way. And that's what I find the most creative, smart people do. They learn it and they pay attention to their teacher and they learn it that way. And then they forget that and something different comes out.
I like the way that you put that, and I can definitely relate to maybe, when I was younger and I was more arrogant, I definitely struggled with that, and I see a lot of people who have that, who are maybe missing some components like that, who aren't coachable, where there's like those two halves of it. There's the
Yes.
part of where like you've gotta sort of force yourself to go jump
Yes.
through the hoops and get the good
Mm-hmm.
grades, so to speak, and sort of get the piece
Mm-hmm.
of paper, and then after
Mm-hmm.
that's done, transition into doing it your way. And I see a lot of people who either they were really good students but not very good thinkers, and they can only sort of just copy, and they can't really be creative and problem solve and think on their own. And then I think that we see a lot of entrepreneurs who have that other piece where they're fine being crazy and creative, but then it's not really grounded in anything. They don't have any really sort of foundation. And so I really like the way that you put that in. There's sort of like those two halves of it. You have to sort of know you need to know how to follow instructions, but then once you get your skill good enough, then you need to have almost like that confidence to sort of do things your own way. So I really like how you explain that.
And and it sounds like you see the same thing, is that they come to you wanting to know how to do, for example, in your case, have a membership site that makes money. And as you know, when I came to you, I'd already built a couple of membership sites that weren't functioning the way I wanted. So I said, I'm going to follow this exactly where he says to do it. And then if it doesn't work, it's your fault, right? I'm going to do it exactly the way you say do it. And then when I'm done, but I'll see when I'm teaching people, for example, how to do Botox or Juvederm, and they've been doing it a while. Some of them, like this woman, listen, they try it my way, and then it becomes blended with what they already know. And others are just not teachable. And when I'm done, I'll watch them practice on each other, and I think, well, okay, you wasted your trip here because what you're making looks like some freak from Mars, and you just weren't listening. So, yeah, you have to be teachable. One other thing, one of my other favorite quotes about this idea, I think Andy Warhol had lots of smart things to say. And one of them, he said, because none of this works if you're afraid of being criticized. None of it. You will never build the first website. You'll never send an email. You'll never make a video. And another thing he said was, I never read the reviews. I just measure them in inches. I think that's so beautiful. You just want people to talk a lot, and you'll work it out to make it where some of them like you. But I love that quote.
Awesome. Get them talking first. And I mean, yeah, as far as people being not coachable, I mean, luckily it's I mean, sometimes you have to be patient, and luckily it's not everyone, but I mean, as far as like teaching people how to make websites or things like that, like I'll definitely come across people where I'll say, here's how to make a web page, here's how to do copywriting, and they don't even want to follow step one of what I want to teach. And then there are people where
Mhm.
I say, here's how to make a web page, and then they say, well, help, it's not converting. And I say, okay, well, now it's time for you to sort of switch gears there and think a little bit for yourself. And so, I mean, lots of cool
Mhm.
stuff today, and I don't want to keep you for too long. We've already gone over time, but I mean, lots of just stuff about entrepreneurship and life in general, and all kinds of cool quotes. And my favorite thing of today was that whole imperfect heroes thing. And you mentioned the courses that me and Lance have. We have membershipcube.com and we have webinarcrusher.com. But I want to make sure that everyone knows how to find out what there is to know about Mr. Dr. Charles Runels. So can you tell us about your websites and your books and stuff like that, or just where you want people to
Yeah.
go after having listened to this today?
Yeah, I appreciate that. For people who are interested and who are physicians, they can just call our office. It's 888-920-5311, and or go to just Google my name and they'll find our business. All of the websites have a place where doctors can learn, request free information. For people who are interested in the procedures themselves, we've got books on Amazon. Again, you've got courses about how to make that happen, and you're largely responsible for those. And I promise you, when you read them, you'll find typos, but they sell like crazy, and they teach people. So yeah, they can go to Amazon and put in my name, Charles Runnels, Runels, or Winnie the Procedures. But yeah, thank you for the mentioning. But I want to again say that a lot of this would not have happened without your help. So I appreciate you having me on the show.
Awesome. I mean, we appreciate you too, and I'm always I mean, I know that I'm always looking to learn, always looking for even just like some really quick takeaways. So even just seeing, what you've done with your marketing and seeing what you've built up is always super helpful to me. And even like when we mentioned as this call started how it's really important to sort of look at what the need is or what the pain is and to solve that problem. And from a lot of what you've built and what we've helped you build, even me and Lance have seen a need for adjusting some of our training a little bit, or we've developed a couple of plugins just because had this need to, for example, have a
Hmm.
directory of your members, and that didn't exist. And so, I mean, it definitely goes both ways. You learn from us, and we learn from you, and hopefully, everyone who's listening learns from all of us, because it's just like we said, life is short. As soon as you stop learning, as soon as you stop being curious and you get jaded, then you kind of slowly start dying. And so, I mean, lots of good
Hmm.
stuff sort of tackled today. And so, like you said, the phone number for doctors to call 888-920-5311, and then you spelled out your name, but let's just make sure that everyone knows how to type that into a Google search, into an Amazon search. That's Charles Runnels. That's Charles Runels. So thanks so much, Dr. Charles, for stopping by the show today, dropping all these truth bombs, these knowledge bombs, telling it to us straight like it is. And so me and Lance appreciate you. And so thanks for stopping by.
Thank you, Robert. You have a wonderful day.
Hey, it's Robert Plank here. Thanks for listening. What a fantastic interview with Dr. Charles Runels. Make sure that you go to robertplank.com/234 to get all of Dr. Charles's information